we're going to get started. We have a very busy night ahead of us. Got an exciting demo that the folks over at the studio and B&H shared with us. So with that in mind, I just want to set the stage for here, because what we got going here is what we've all been living in lately. The last year and a half, last 15 months, it's all been remote, and we've all learned new tools, and we've all learned new skills. And thank goodness the companies like the companies who are on with us today, they've made this all happen. They've kept us all on the air. They kept our productions going while everybody was all over the place. So tonight we got a great demonstration of a new workflow that our friends over at the studio at B&H put together with LiveU, with ARRI, and with SNS. And I just want to do some brief introductions before you get started here, because there are a few folks who certainly are going to be leading the way here. But we have three exciting presenters to start the evening, and it really starts with the main bridge of this demo is LiveU. And I think I don't need to do an introduction. And George Klippel, why don't you come up here and join me? George is Director of Channel Sales for LiveU. How you doing, George? Welcome aboard.
Hey, Marty. Glad to be here. Thanks very much for having us.
Well, thank you for joining us. And where are you calling in from, George?
I am calling in from my humble abode in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
All right. Well, good. Good to see you. All right. Good to see you. And next up, we've got on the agenda, we've got Jason Inoue from ARRI. Jason, you join you? There he is.
Great.
He's looking sharp, by the way. Look at that guy. They must be in imaging, They must be in pictures. You ought to be in pictures,
I'm trying.
Jason. And
trying
Jason,
my best.
You're senior technical sales rep, right?
Correct. I'm here in Burbank, California. We're here in our creative space here at ARRI. Hopefully when we get out of this, everyone come visit me and I can visit you. So very excited to be here. Thank you, Martin. Thank you, George. Thank you, Michelle, for having us. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And next up in the demo is another good friend of SVG's and Silicon Valley Video. That's Steve McKenna. Steve, come on and say hi.
Hi, everybody. Hey, Marty. Thanks for having us. Exciting to be here to show you guys this workflow that the studio has worked up for us.
It's great. And Steve's Director of Sales at SNS, Studio Network Solutions. All right. And we've talked a bit about the folks over at the studio who this workflow was developed with. It all started with a friend of mine, a mad Frenchman, I think. Or is that what they call him? Michel Suissa. Michel, there he is.
Okay, coming from you, I'll take it as a compliment. So thank you very much.
I only say that out of true love and respect. Right?
Absolutely. It's likewise, my friend. Likewise.
Comment allez-vous, Michel?
Très bien, mon ami. Merci beaucoup.
And Michel, as you probably know, Michel's the managing director of the studio at B&H. And what's going on with you, Michel? Give me a quick snippet of what's new with your life.
You don't want to know what's new in my life. You want to know what's new with the studio. Is what you want to know.
It depends. I kind of like you, but tell me about the studio. Go ahead.
That's a private conversation, so let's not go there. But we're very fortunate, in this entire tragedy that the pandemic was. We've been very, very fortunate to remain in business, to actually be able to serve the community in many different ways. And this is yet another example that we'll try to show a different workflow that can potentially be interesting for a number of our customers, certainly the ones that are joining us tonight. So that's what's going on. We're as busy as ever. It looks like production, post, broadcast, every single vertical market is back up. And there's a high demand for creation of content. So, it is looking good.
That's great. And next up, Steve Vanella. Steve's Michelle's sidekick over at the studio. He's broadcast and facility sales engineer at the studio B&H. And he dressed up his bunker, but behind that is plywood. We've all seen it before, but you made it look a little sharper, Manella. Because we thought you were living in the bunker. You were hiding out, man, out in West Hampton.
That's it. I haven't left this room in 16 hours, I think, today. It's been a long day.
You were about to say 16 months.
It's pretty much been 16 months. I moved out into here on probably March 16th, March 17th. And I've been working from here since
2020. Then. You should make that clear.
Yeah, 2020. Thank you, Michelle. Yeah, and we've produced out of this room our complete NAB 2020 shows, SIGGRAPH 2020, produced for B&H Optic 2020, which was 2 or 3 days. So it's earned its wings here.
That's great. Well, listen, these are the guys who are going to be talking tonight. Before we get into it, I just wanted to do the usual, and this is specifically for Tom Baldessari, who ignores it all the time. But I'm going to share this for you, Baldessari. Take a look at this thing, right? So mute your microphones, guys. We don't need to hear you do your dishes, right? Or worse, right? Put this to enjoy this thing better. Speaker view, unless you just want to look at this face, and that would be a big mistake. And finally, because we're getting bigger and because things are getting a little bit more complicated here, I used to call on people, and I probably will anyway, because I see Jim Skinner there, and I can't avoid calling hi to Skinner. Hey, Skinner.
Oh my gosh, I miss you so much, Martin. How's it going?
We miss you. How's everything on Facebook, baby?
When are you? I asked you to come every week. Why don't you open the campus? Come on down.
Are you in the RV? Are you in the RV?
I am in an RV. I'm in a van down by the river. It is true.
All right. Well, you're well. But anyway, with that said, Skinner, you know what? Even you are going to have to ask your questions in the chat window. All right. But maybe not. So with that said, all right, that's the etiquette. Let's try to keep to it because we're already moving. I want to move this ahead tonight. All right. So you know what? Please, you know what? Remove me, remove Jason, remove George. Let's hand this over to Manella and Michelle alone, and you guys kick this evening off and tell us what we're about to experience here, because I think it's going to be really cool. We're going to see a remote production workflow that I think will, with a live feed starting from a digital cinema camera out in Burbank. So give us a little bit more detail, would you, Steve and Michelle?
I'll start for the 10,000 feet view on what we are trying to present here tonight. We wanted to show that we can bridge worlds that are not necessarily directly associated, which is digital cinema, which is a very, very large market for us, very important, and the world of live production. There's been a push in the industry for what's called the cinematic multicam, where larger sensor cameras are being used to produce live shows or to capture live images, with a certain level of character that maybe is different than traditional 2/3-inch cameras or any other cameras that are being used for remote production. So today we wanted to showcase that you can use the high end of cinema cameras, ARRI, and include that into a live broadcast environment, with cloud distribution to another location, and then yet another contribution to the equation is really the post-production and live editing of that content being captured live, from a different location. So that's essentially the idea behind, that concept. We hope that it's going to prove to be interesting, and people may have to, be able to learn a few things. That the integration of different worlds is something that can be possible, and also maybe another way to consider a remote workflow for different kind of applications. So based on that, I'm going to let Steve dive a little bit deeper into the behind the scenes of what kind of technology we're using and the ins and outs and all the players that are involved and the technology involved behind this demonstration.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. What we're showing here this evening is taking a digital cinema platform, the ARRI Mini LF, that's going to be sitting out in the ARRI facility in Burbank, and using a LiveU 800 encoder. We're transmitting that signal over the bonded cellular line. No Ethernet, no Wi-Fi, strictly a bonded cellular circuit that's coming out, and that signal will be transmitted up into the LiveU cloud, down into a LU 2000 server that's sitting behind me. And outside of that server, we're sending a video, whether it's NDI or SDI. We have the ability to bring that into our storage server, which is a Studio Network Solutions EVO. And we'll bring that in, and from there, generating some proxies or some lower res files, and then handing them off in the editorial perspective so that Steve McKenna in St. Louis can VPN connect into this system here, grab those files, drop them into a Premiere timeline, and start cutting. So that's really what we've got going on from a technology perspective. The workflow is, LiveU's workflow is tried and proven. It's being utilized every day in the broadcast and sports environment. But from the digital cinema perspective, this is something that's a little bit, I think, unique. And with that, Marty, I'll hand that back to you and hand it off to George.
Right, thank you. Thanks, Steve. So we're just going to cut right to the chase here. I just remind everybody, please mute your mics. We don't want to hear you, right? Number two, to make sure we all look as pretty as possible and the images look as good as possible, please, stop your cameras as well, so you can sit and listen and learn. And with that said, I want to bring to the stage again our friend George from LiveU. There he is, Pittsburgh, PA. We love you. All right. So George, take it away. You got 20 minutes, 25 minutes to give us the story according to LiveU, and then set the stage for what we're going to see later.
Marty, really appreciate it. And you didn't tell me this group was going to be so fun. So I'm really excited. This is my first one. So thank you. And I'll share my screen. Hope you can see it, and let me know that you can, and we'll get started. But, LiveU has been around for quite some time, but just to kick it off, I want to give those people who might be out there tonight that don't know anything about LiveU a little bit of an overview before we get to the demo presentation part of the night.
Wiped out.
So the first thing to mention about LiveU is we've been around since 2006, and we're the leader in this space. We've been the inventor of this technology with our patent holder for LiveU, bonded cellular networks, if you will. We've got award-winning technology in 4K encoding. We've got the first ever multi-camera production field unit based entirely on native 5G, and that's the LU800 that we're dealing with tonight. And we just recently announced a LiveU 360 all-inclusive video subscription service. So you might have heard of that. But again, longtime player in this space, invented the technology, and we're the proven experts in the field. 4,000 end user customers, over 21,000 units globally, producing tons of content, almost a petabyte of monthly live transmissions. To put our product line into perspective, although we are focusing on just one product tonight, the LU800, which is the top of the line, we break our products down into 4 distinct categories. The first is the portable units, or what we call the encoders. That's where the LU800 is. We have other lines like the 600 and the 300 and what have you. But those are the encoders that connect to the cameras, like the ARRI or the output of a switcher, for example. These encoders have SDI input and HDMI input, etc. Then we have another bucket right here called contribution encoders. These are encoders that are rack mount units. These would be also encoders that you might find in an insert studio. But again, these 2 buckets here are the encoders. Then we have a line of decoders. This bucket is where the encoders are sending to the decoders. They're taking the signal that comes off of those encoders and IP and decoding them back into a signal that's either RTMP or SDI or NDI, SRT we just announced recently, or MPEG-TS. We even have physical decoders like a 4K decoder, like the LU4000 we call it, an HD encoder, the LU2000, even a managed cloud servers for you if you need them. And finally, the last bucket that we have are IP solutions. And these are additional like add-on solutions like video return or tally light or IP pipe, which is a great one for this camera that we're using tonight, the mini LF camera from ARRI. And the IP pipe is basically an IP-based solution that allows you to control any IP-based camera remotely using what is called our IP pipe solution. So these are the 4 different distinct categories that our products are housed in. And then everything at the top here, it's called our LiveU Central Cloud Management Platform. This is a web-based application that allows you complete command and control over all of our encoders and decoders and contribution encoders, our IP solutions, where you can set things like delay and everything else. And you'll see more of this later on when Steve Manella gets back on the set doing the demo. From a high-level perspective on how the technology works, you have your encoders. We have built inside of the encoders all of our cellular modems. They have Wi-Fi built in as well as Ethernet. And what we do is we essentially take the input of a camera or a switcher. We use multiple cellular connections and Ethernet and Wi-Fi, bond those connections together with our secret sauce we call LiveU Reliable Transport, or LRT. We take that signal, transport it across the internet, deliver those packets to our server, and spit it out the other side to a server, a cloud server, physical server, etc. So that's kind of like how the workflow works for LiveU. The LU800 that we're focusing on today that ties this workflow together through these many states and places that we're going, and you'll see again in the demo that we get going, is the very first production level field unit for the news environment, production environment, sports environment. It kind of can function anywhere, that has multiple camera capabilities in one unit. So you could have 1, 2, 3, or 4 different cameras going into this device, and it's built for 5G production from the ground up. So it's optimized for 5G from the very beginning. It supports high-end productions up to 70 megabits per second, 4K P60, 10-bit HDR, and up to 16 audio channels in one device. Not only can you send 4 independent feeds out of this unit directly back to a production switcher, you can actually switch on the unit in the field. So you can actually live switch and send a single switched feed back to a remote destination switcher if you want to. Some of the main features that the LU800 has is up to 4 5G modems that can be connected into the unit. You can again do 4K P60 10-bit HDR transmissions for really high optimal color depth richness. You have remote production tools such as video return, tally, audio connect for two-way comms, 16 channels of audio I mentioned. This unit also comes with dual input power supplies, plus 2 Ethernet and 2 Wi-Fi interfaces. So inside the box, the LU800 has 6 connections for bonded cellular, but it has 2 Ethernet and 2 Wi-Fi interfaces. So all in, if you used all of the connections, you could actually have 10 bonded connections simultaneously with this one device. One of the nice things about it as well is when you get this unit, it comes standard as a what we call LU800 Pro, and it's a single unit, single input, if you will. And you can upgrade it to a Pro 2, which would allow you single or dual camera input, or the Pro 4, which would allow you single, dual, 3 camera, 4 camera inputs at a time. So you can kind of add and bring in the software upgrades to the multiple cameras if you want to, or when you need to, depending on what your production environment calls for. Now, we have the decoders, as I mentioned before. We have the LU2000, we have a 4000, and we also have the cloud servers. Tonight, what we'll be working with is the LU2000. The LU2000 is a device that has 3 available output options. It can do a single, dual, or quad output, and those outputs can be SDI or NDI. It can also do RTMP, MPEG-TS, or SRT, as I mentioned before. It does both H.264 or HEVC decoding. It has audio IFB, and it's fully managed, as I mentioned before, with our LiveU control, or what we call LU Central control application. On the LU4000, it's our higher end server that does 4K workflows, but it also does HD as well. So you could get that if you wanted to, or use that as well. Now, one of the things that I was asked to talk about a little bit was some of the workflows that people are using our products for. Now, you know, we always talk about our broadcast and sports customers, and we do have quite a few. We have about 65% of the market share. Every broadcaster in the US has a LiveU server. They can take a feed in from a LiveU backpack, CNN, Bloomberg, MSNBC, you know, NBC, you name it. So we have a ton of broadcast and sports customers. Same on the corporate and government side. Education as well is a big, big market for us. But tonight we were asked to talk a little bit about some of our non-traditional customers, let's call them, such as, you know, Facebook or LinkedIn, Prudential Financial, production companies that are using higher end production gear like the ARRI cameras, or you know, Embassy Row, Emerson College, BC Live Productions. And there's 3 distinct case studies I want to talk a little bit about tonight that fall into this non-traditional customer base. Toyota, Thaler Media, and TD Ameritrade. They are all using what we call our REMI production model. And they also use these higher end production models that we're demonstrating tonight during this demo. So what is REMI? You know, for us, we used to call it at-home production, but it's really a REMI workflow model where you're essentially taking your cameras to the field and your LiveU packs, but you're not pulling out a whole production kit. You're not rolling a truck. You're not taking out a fly pack anymore, but you're sending everything back to your home office or your production studio. And in the case of the LiveU LU800, as I mentioned, you can send up to 4 high-quality full-frame sync videos from a single LU800 unit and either switch on the unit or switch it back 4 independent feeds back at the station or your control room. And it reduces cost, as you know, right? You don't have to have a SAT truck there, fiber connections, and you only have to have the remote teams on site that you really need. The camera people, you're not paying for shipping costs and all the other people that you would need, switchers and Chiron and all those other things. You're optimizing your resources and you're using the equipment that's in your studio that's already built in that studio. And we've gone through and done ROIs with other customers like Nesson and some of the others that use this. And it's been one of the highest growth production ways of doing production that we've had seen at LiveU over the last 2 years, this REMI model or at-home production model. And it saves about 70% off of your standard production costs when you do this REMI model versus sending everything out to the field each and every time that you go out to try and do a production. So one of the examples that I mentioned that I wanted to talk about today was Toyota North America. They have a bunch of our units here listed down below, the 600s and a few others, the quad servers. And what they do is they take these units out and they go around to all of the manufacturing plants around the country. They have about 6 of them in the US and 1 in Canada. And every month they go to a different manufacturing plant. And what they do is they take these cameras and go to these different stations outlined like I'm showing you on this map here, and give updates to their global team from their VPs of these different plants and the owners of these different stations that you see on the map here. So one might be the brake line assembly, one might be engine assembly, one might be paint or what have you. And they talk about their efficiencies and productivity and share those best practices with all of the other plants and all of the other groups and folks throughout Toyota Motor Company throughout the globe. And this plant, just for scale, if you can see there, it's about 8.1 million square feet, about 169 football fields under one roof. And what they're doing is they essentially send out the LiveU backpacks and the camera folks to the station. And then all of those shots come back to the control room in Plano, Texas. And this is some pictures of the control room. It's a fully functioning control room with a raw switcher, just like you'd see in a normal, high-end production environment. It's got, replay. They have Chiron. They have a Ross carbonite. They have a bunch of different other high-end technology, and they use the two-way comms with LiveU. There's the LiveU server that's sitting in the rack there, taking the feeds in. And on the plant floor, this is what they're doing. They're moving around from station to station with these different units, and they take the cameras on the tripod on rolling sticks, and then you'll see the LiveU unit there is mounted on the tripod, and they roll these throughout the actual manufacturing plant. And while they're doing this, they're switching this live and putting in graphics in lower thirds, and then they're distributing this out over their CDN, their content delivery network. And then they're taking it and going to multiple different destinations, to private YouTube channels and to different other destinations through their CDN. So that's one example of how they use the LiveU in this REMI workflow type model and how they bring it back to the plant and do the switching. Another example is of a smaller company called Thaler Media, and they're based out of Miami, Florida. They do a lot of the undercard PGA events. So the PGA of America, they have, obviously, they use some of our gear, and they do a lot of stuff, high-end broadcast stuff, but they have recently started to do a lot of online golfing events like the Western Amateur Open. This was done in Chicago, Illinois, and it's Sunset Ridge Golf Course. And this company out of Miami started doing these undercard events or lower events to stream those live to the web for the PGA Tour. And what they did was they took their LiveU units and essentially they send the backpacks out with the camera folks to the event. And this is the guy's control room. It's set up in his garage. He uses a new tech environment, does all complete end-to-end NDI workflow, but he's got a TriCaster set up, green screen talent over here using video return and doing play-by-play calling. And everything is, again, multiple cameras leapfrogging through the holes and going back and forth between different holes and sending everything back to the control room here in Miami. And they're switching it live using replay again, doing the announcing and everything back in Miami, but only having the packs on site in Chicago for the event. Another one that we did was with the ocean cleanup. And the ocean cleanup you may have heard about was the big event that happened a couple of years ago now. I think it was about 2 years ago, where they drugged this system out into the ocean from San Francisco, and it was sent out to collect all the plastics out there in the ocean. And they took it out. This was a big to-do. It lasted for a full day, where they took this ship and kind of went out there, and they wanted to, do a lot of publicity around it. All the networks were there. A lot of high-end publicity was around it, and they used our gear to again do this type of REMI production. And they had real high-end cameras connected into the LiveU packs that were out on different boats. They were connected to drones, different skiffs and stuff on the bay. As this boat went out through San Francisco Bay out into the ocean, getting this netting that was going to collect all of the plastics in the ocean. And then what they did was send it back again into a TriCaster environment to the servers here. It came back into the LiveU servers. They took all of the different cameras into the TriCaster, switching it live and sending it out to their viewers via Facebook and Facebook Live. And again, another example of this REMI workflow. And then finally, the last slide that I wanted to talk about was these insert studios, because this has become, especially over the last year and a half with COVID, this was one of the biggest things for LiveU. And we saw significant growth in the corporate world, and other production companies were building insert studios and working with companies to create these insert studios so people could go on to air with the broadcasts as well as doing other type of these REMI productions. So this is an example of a few of the insert studios that TD Ameritrade have, where they are setting up essentially a video return with a LiveU pack and either ring lights or key lights like these right in somebody's home office. And what they're doing is sending, instead of getting a server, what they'll do is they'll get the LiveU backpack, they set it up on the tripod, and the CEO or the executive, in this case, all they have to do is hit one switch, turns and powers up everything. And then they use IFB or video return. They do their media hits in these insert studios that go out to MSNBC or CNN or wherever they're being asked to do their media hit. Bloomberg in this case, most of the time for TD Ameritrade. And it's really a seamless integration. Some are really nice, like this one here and this one here, and this guy's in a closet. So some are set up in different types of areas that are in close quarters. But they really can look very, very nice and have all the things you'd expect, where you see, like in this case, he's got video return coming back from the unit right here on a nice a display screen. The unit, the LU800, has a mini HDMI out of the device. You also have a 7-inch capacitive touchscreen on the front that you could use for a video return as well if you wanted to. So that's an example, again, of how Another company is using the unit in a creative way to again bring the technology into an environment that is kind of unexpected or unusual in some respects. So last but not least, again, going back and tying it back together before I turn it over to you again, Marty, today's workflow, we have that LU800 that we talked about, the field unit, taking that SDI input from the ARRI camera. You could take up to 4 inputs. We have, I think, 2 cameras connected to it today. We're bonding those connections using our 6 modems connected to it, sending it back to Steve, where he's got his server, and he's going to send it on to the other Steve at SNS, and the workflow will kind of be all completed using that REMI type of model. And even though we don't show it tonight, one of the nice things with this unit, and I did mention it briefly, the IP pipe, this unit, this ARRI unit has IP capabilities, and we are able to, with the LiveU unit, actually control that device over the IP connection using the IP pipe protocol that LiveU now has as an offering. So Marty, that's kind of my spiel and everything I wanted to share. Yeah, I hope so. I hope, George. Well, I hope my spiel was good and kind of gave everyone a level set of what LiveU is doing and what we're all about. So thank you, Marty, for letting me do that.
Well, thank you. But I got to pick on somebody, because it wouldn't be in a Silicon Valley video gear night if I wasn't picking on somebody. And Skinner, you're still around? I see you muted, and I don't see your camera. But you said in the chat.
Oh, I'm such a ringer. You know I love LiveU. Oh my God, I love LiveU.
What is this? I mean, you're supposed to love your mother. You're supposed to love your wife. You love your dog. You may love pizza, but you love LiveU. Come on.
Let's just start with, first off, the LiveU Solo. You got to just have one in your back pocket. They're so affordable. They're so good. You just need a LiveU Solo on you at all times. Just, you don't know if you need to go live. You don't know what's going to happen. You need one. Okay. So first off, that's crazy. Then when they started offering the server-side network component, where you could sort of always have them available, and you could also do HEVC up to them, and then do, traditional H.264 to bad sites like mine that only take H.264. Sorry about that. Sorry. I mean, so many great things. Now, I'm interested to find out a bunch of things. For example, what are the formats you're actually seeing people that eventually go to YouTube? So you have a lot of people that go to YouTube or go to streaming. Are they taking it up and then converting to SDI and then traditionally cutting it, like in the case of PGA? What's sort of tell me about the translations from what's out in the field, how they're transmitting it as, and then what are they doing in the switching unit before they finally go to RTMP out to YouTubes of the world?
Yeah, so what they're doing is they're taking it in from the field. They come in and they hit the server, and they usually take in either SDI into the switcher, or in the case of Thaler Media, for the example I gave just now, it was NDI. So it was an NDI workflow all the way. So it was coming into the server, hit the server, the LU2000, NDI, and then they switched it, added graphics, did all their magic and everything else. And then they output RTMP out to that destination to Facebook Live.
So I don't know if you guys have gotten this far, but do you have anything at this point where people are actually taking it up to your cloud and then cutting it at the cloud? I don't even know if that's possible, but it just seems like there's a possibility there where if someone's sending all this stuff and you guys have sufficiently developed on the cloud, you could basically pay for a certain amount of instances. Like if I could just say, I want to buy 8 instances, I want to always be running kind of an AWS-like, environment. And then, but the one thing you don't have at AWS, you have no ability to cut those. You can't do any kind of editing of any kind. You just have a node running all the time. So have you guys thought about having a way to sort of cut those together to then produce an RTPM stream you could send out?
Yeah, we're absolutely thinking about that. We don't have that today. You're right. So you'd have to use something like a vMix, or you'd have to use there are other softwares out there that you could cut that takes an RTMP input, and you could cut that and then just send it on to your destination. But we have Dan Pisarski, our VP of engineering, absolutely on top of that, because that is one of the requests that we hear quite often.
Yeah, and as a site that people stream to, I only sort of trust you as a middleman. I don't want someone else. Like, there's a lot of vendors that will cut a stream and then send it back out. And in working with these vendors, we find that like they're just an AWS instance somewhere. They don't have a lot of control over it. We've seen streams slingshot to London and back to New York and have like 20 seconds of latency because the vendor was just not very serious. And for us to have streams going to a cloud and then coming back out, and not introducing latency, not introducing slingshotting around the world, you know, like not having port capacity. So,
well, it is being looked at. So that's what I can tell you. That's where I can go with that comment.
All right.
Thanks,
Well,
Jim.
listen, Skinner,
Martin wants
thank
to get in
you.
here. Martin, you'd like to chat a bit?
You guys chat, man. You guys chat, because I got to bring Jason on. Jason is looking sharp there. He's in Hollywood right now. He's looking good. And so, hey, Skinner, it's good to see you back. And I saw you're one of those non-traditional companies, that Facebook company I hear about. I hear good things about it, or bad things, whatever. But Jason, it's up to you now. We're
Yes.
going to pass the workflow, and look at that. That's a blue, nice looking shirt.
Awesome.
You know, Jason.
Awesome.
You know, we're going to be running a digital cinema camera through bonded cellular tonight. Tell us a little bit about what we got ahead of us and what's going on at ARRI.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having us. You know, the world has changed, and we call it the new normal. That's what we call it now. And we've learned a lot. So what I like to do is I'll share my deck now. Jumping in real quickly here. I'll share this with you. So today we're talking about remote production, and it's been amazing, very exciting. You know, we've talked to many people, not just cinematographers, producers, marketing executives, everyone looking for a way to make things happen and to grow into the future. Camera control, lens control, color control. This has all been a big discussion as we've moved forward. So just a quick soundbite about us as an ARRI and what we believe in as an ARRI. So what we believe in, great imagery, of course, starts with the cinematographer, the videographer. But what we feel on the technology side is we believe in color fidelity and dynamic range before resolution. I know we're in the middle of a pixel wars right now, but when you speak to the Roger Deakins of the world, the Rodrigo Prietos of the world, the Chivos of the world, you know, they don't want to sacrifice high dynamic range, highlight to shadow details, color fidelity, and the wide color gamut that our color science comes with our sensor has always been a strong point with our ARRI tool set. But during the pandemic, the large format sensor that's in the Mini LF has actually been a big attribute to help in remote solution. We had a big instance with privacy. If you look in the upper left-hand corner, having a large sensor made shallower depth of field. And how that really helped was there was a lot of very uncontrollable environment. People, you know, might have a Monet painting behind the wall, but having this shallower depth of field with large format made things fall off softer. Producers really appreciated that too as well. The other element that came in really big with large format was the uncontrollable lighting environment. A lot of times you can't go into a location or adjust too many things. You know, we've had HDR since 2010, since we had the first sensor. So we've had that high dynamic range, 14 plus stops to latitude that really helped, and even more in large format, and also having a lower noise floor. The third thing that was really big with remote solution was color and skin tone reproduction. A lot of times you couldn't do makeup and hair, but as you can see on the image on the far right, we did a video, you can see it on ARRI channel, where we actually took our fellow colleagues who are not actors, not models, anyone, to show really true skin reproduction without hair and makeup designer. So gave a lot of flexibility for the cinematographer and the producers. And then right away, what was the big discussion? Well, how do we get the signal out? So I have George's box right here that he just discussed. And here is the LiveU 800 connected to the camera. We'll go into a little bit more of that. But this was also the reliability, getting signal out of a location when you can't have full controllability, as which play a big part on the cinematic side. And this is where the uncontrolled environment meeting the modern approach came about. And it just kept building more things fun. Can we get a camera in place? Can we get lighting in places? Can we get movement? So this is what I'll dive into very quickly. But does this new normal equal return to quality? We just bring up this quick question because no, we've always had quality, even in an uncontrolled environment. This is an example of NAB from 2018, where we actually had our large format studio size LF in a very uncontrolled environment with sodium vapor lights, all different mixture of lighting, but still able to craft a beautiful image, even when you can't control people coming by, everything, environment. So no, we can do it during pandemic. And in this new world that we're coming out of pandemic, we could all make that happen. But today, what I'm just quickly going to show is tools to make this all happen for remote solution. We're using near set and far set, or offset is what we say. So we have in our ARRI remote solutions, we have offset tools. Of course, we have our cameras, we have our lighting systems. We have also some applications for lighting control that you can do offset. We also have tools that overlap, that be near set, which means we can use the cameras, we can use RF control, wireless devices to control something, say 3,000 feet away. So you're not directly on set, but you could be at a far distance away, wireless video systems as well. So wanted to pinpoint that and wanted to jump in what you do for the camera itself. We've had IP connectivity all along, but it was really funny how this new normal created more usage of our IP connectivity with our camera. And what does that mean? You can actually control all the functionality of the Mini LF with the same user interface that you see on the camera viewfinder over IP. And it's not an app, nothing, just a web browser. You type in the IP address into the camera and you can bring up the actual user interface menu and control all the functionality of our Mini LF camera system. So here's a screen of it. So you just type in the IP address. You can also, if you look at the screen on the far right, you can also remote stop, start, trigger the camera. So I could be here in Burbank, California. I can control the camera all the way up in Toronto, Canada, and I can remote stop, start, trigger the camera. I can also do playback. I could also do camera functionalities, switch in ND filters, change the frame rate, white balance, all over IP. So I could be anywhere around the world and I can connect to that camera. We can do the same thing with our lighting systems too. Every light has an IP address. You can just dial it in. You don't need an app. You just dial into a web browser and you can have full functionality of our sky panels and our orbiter lights. As you can see here, you could do it through gel, CCT parameters, HSI parameters, and you also do some of the lighting effects. You can have the fire effect, TV effect, police car effect, all controlled remotely over IP. And the great thing with our new orbiter light is we have a new sensor on top of the light. And what that does is that allows you to calibrate it to the environment of the color temperature that is on set. So this is also where you can control it remotely as well. So just to show a quick case studies that we have, this is an example of near remote using our remote head, our SRH360 on a Agito robotic dolly, where the director and cinematographers were offset, I would say about 500, 600 feet away, and they could remotely control this robotic dolly and the head camera, focus iris zoom control remotely. So this is an example of near remote. And this is an example of the SRH360 head. And in the middle there, this ERM 2400, these are our radio modules that give you the extension of 3,200 feet away. I was at my home trying it, went down 2 blocks around the corner and still had signal and able to control the focus iris zoom control. And we have our control panel on the right, and we also have wheels. We also have a digital encoder head too, if you like in broadcast, more to focus iris on the panhandles left and right. And you can actually operate the camera remotely that way as well. Here's our second case study. This one involved near remote and far remote. So in this example, the image on the left, we used to shoot at LiveU Studios. So this is a big studio here down in Studio City. John Legend records there. Ariana Grande records there. They have a restaurant bar, totally soundproofed and designed for recording artists. And they were taking these new artist pink sweats, basically putting in there. We put the SRH360 head in there, and that was operated near remote, offside. And then if you look at the images in the middle, we have the signal and control set outside through cellular bonded network to the producer and to the gaffer and DP, where they can see the signal, say 40, 50 miles away. and can make any tweaks they want on lighting or camera functionality. So this is an example of near remote and far remote. So just to give you a background, just want to show a visual of the camera lighting crew and the control monitoring it. So you have your lighting camera on set. Your gaffer can see the display, the user interface of the sky panels or orbiters. You can see the DP can also have camera functionality remotely as well. And then also through the LiveU 800, you can also send that signal like George was sharing to your producers, to executives, marketing executives, or whoever needs to see it as well. So it was a full, complete solution that people asked for. So if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them after. You can also email me at jasoninoue@arri.com, or you can also connect with me on LinkedIn as well. And we can actually, start a dialogue if you have any questions. Because what we like to say is, this is an ongoing solution. New issues come up all the time, and we love to hear how we move into the new world if we can help you and build a solution for you. So thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, we're going to move this along a little faster, but thank you, Jason, and I'm sure we'll be back later to answer some questions. With that in mind, we're going to pass this to St. Louis, where our friends at SNS, Steve McKenna, is hanging out, and obviously Steve's a big part of this demo later. And Steve, you know what? It's good to see you. Everything okay with you? What's going on in St. Louis?
Everything's been great. A little cloudy today, but other than that, doing well. Cardinals could be doing better, I guess. But
hey, listen, you know what?
Generally good.
We all can be doing. But give us an idea of what you got going tonight, and the tech said you're going to demo the NOMAD remote access to EVO in New York via the ShareBrowser interface. Blah blah blah. I don't know what that means, but maybe you can explain it to us, Steve.
Well, yeah, we'll look through the product line here a little bit, kind of go over the slide deck, and then we'll actually get to go in and do this live. So as we've said before here, Steve Manella is capturing the feed of this from the ARRI set with Jason directly to one of our servers in New York, and I'm going to pick up through our database structure and then be able to edit. So let me go ahead and pop up the deck here, and we'll start right here and kind of run you through, for those of you, again, just like George, a little less familiar with SNS. And what's really neat about all the companies, I think, that are in here is that we all have a commitment to value. We all have a commitment to quality, and we all have a commitment to really getting more out of what you're doing. So whether it's LiveU with centralized control rooms to elongate the value of your control room wherever it may be, whether it's ARRI allowing us incredibly high quality imaging with now remote control and things like that and adapting to remote, or it's us here at SNS. So everything we've seen so far obviously creates an image, it streams an image, it sends an image somewhere, all for the purpose of live production. However, with all the content that we do generate over time, we don't generally throw away our content. It can be repurposed, it can be remonetized, it needs to be stored, it needs to be organized. And that's where Studio Network Solutions comes in. We provide a broad range of shared storage servers, ranging in size from small on-set 4-bay units all the way up to multi-petabyte units with hundreds of users connected doing 4K, DPX, EXR workflows for color grading. But beyond just being fast enough and making hardware, we also develop in-house our own suite of software tools very specific to the media production industry. So along with every EVO at no additional charge comes our ShareBrowser media asset management system, our Slingshot RESTful API, as well as automation engine, and the NOMAD remote workflow utility that I'm going to get to show you here today. So one integrated solution, but more important for so many of the clients on the call today, more important than just having all of these tools is that we do so in a very open architecture. Rather than having proprietary exotic file systems, proprietary mount utilities to connect to these file systems, we do everything over optimized standard network protocols. So whether those be traditional NAS protocols like SMB or NFS, AFP, for those of you still using that, or more exotic file transfer protocols like FXP and things like that. The idea being that our systems are very easy, both from the user perspective, as well as from the management perspective and the people who have to deal with them on the back end. So little nod to our clients that we do have clients who range in size from boutique production shops all the way up to even, I'm sure, some of the people on this call, companies like Google and Microsoft, the BBC. SNS actually exists in over 70 countries now. So something we're incredibly proud of. We're one of the oldest players in the shared storage for content creation space as well. Been around for 23 years now. So moving on down the line, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the ShareBrowser media asset management system. So we generate a lot of content, and production groups send us a lot of files, and post-production users create a lot of folders. How do we find them later? And that's really where our media asset management system, ShareBrowser, comes in. It has the ability to index not only our own storage, but also any other storage addressable on the network. This includes cloud volumes through Amazon S3, Microsoft Azure, Backblaze, Wasabi, even something as simple as Dropbox in that regard, so that all of our assets are immediately at our fingertips, regardless of where they may live. In addition, we create with ShareBrowser the ability to organize your media in different ways. Obviously, from an editor's perspective, once you put a file on my system and I link to it in a project, I don't want that file to move. I'm going to start getting media offline errors. Things are going to be really challenging for me if we start moving stuff around willy-nilly. And so I need to be able to trust that my file system is always there. Now, for our marketing directors, producers, directors of photography, whoever else may interact with this content who's less concerned about my file system, ShareBrowser, as part of its database, creates something we call bins. Bins are a database structure. They kind of layer on top and allow us to group files together regardless of their physical location in the file system. So now we can organize, repurpose, and create multiple instances of an asset without ever duplicating or unnecessarily moving it from its associated file path, obviously not breaking any of our projects and making us poor editors who have to get everything out furious, quite frankly. So beyond that, production applications, obviously we use a specialized set of tools in media production. We're not just using your standard software running on any computer. We're using production applications, things like Adobe Premiere, AVID Media Composer, Blackmagic's DaVinci Resolve, Final Cut. Many of these tools have been around for quite some time. However, each has a trained user bases that have spent a career learning these tools and being able to use them better than anyone else. At SNS, we firmly believe that your hardware should never dictate the workflow or the software that your creative teams use, which is why we have custom integrations for ShareBrowser for things like Adobe Premiere, which I'll get to show you today, as well as After Effects. Media Composer for your users there. Anyone experienced with AVID, you need project and bin locking, providing great collaborative tools within the AVID environment. We do support that natively on our system. Blackmagic Resolve also has some amazing collaborative tools, providing you locate the database in a central location. SNS is certified by Blackmagic to host that database, unlocking all of the native collaboration within the Resolve software. We've also recently added a panel and direct workflow extension for Resolve and Final Cut as well. I still have many of our clients who use Final Cut day in and day out to bring some great content to light. So regardless of what production application you're using, SNS and ShareBrowser, and through our software tool set and our automations, have something to improve your workflow. And again, all of this comes at no additional cost with our system. Something I'm really excited to talk about, and one thing I'm not going to get to actually show you today, but I'm excited to hear the questions about it. EVO has a RESTful API that we call Slingshot, especially with this group. There are some incredibly talented coders in your companies from Silicon Valley. So the fact that we have a free REST API allowing them to flex their muscle using Python scripting, Ruby, JSON, whatever the case may be, to create custom automations and, more important, custom hooks from our database into the other custom software you guys are building for your own platforms that are out there, whether that be Amazon deliverables or Facebook or whoever the case may be. Not only do we provide you a rich bed to be able to build on top of, but we also don't charge you extra for it. We don't penalize you for your success there. Slingshot, however, scripting and coding for many clients can be challenging. It does take a talented set of engineers to interact with a pure command line API. So with that, just like with everything we do, ease of use for our creatives is just as important as it is for our power users. Slingshot also comes with a very simple user interface, allowing me to set up automations based on file extensions, file locations, regular expressions, file age, based on metadata within the database. And for our more advanced users, we can also create hidden fields in the database, invisible fields to run commands, and to allow systems to interact in a much deeper way. So again, regardless of your skill level, there are going to be tools here that are going to help. So I will get to show you this today, since Steve's capturing all the footage up in New York, and I'm going to need to edit it here in St. Louis, and I haven't boarded my plane yet. So what NOMAD does is we realized at the beginning of this pandemic that we had all the tools to do a very traditional offline workflow. We used a transcode engine proxy generation for our media asset management system, allowing us to search and preview and show files regardless of where they live. They may be on offline volumes. They may be, again, in cloud storage or off to LTO tape. So that was there. And then we needed, we also had our index. We could search for things. We had direct XML exchange with production applications, allowing us to move media into and out of different places. What we didn't have was the glue to bring it together. But because we develop all of our software and hardware in-house, we were able to actually release NOMAD 2 days after California issued the first lockdown order. So while many people were scrambling, trying to kind of figure out how to do this, our customers were able to immediately adopt NOMAD. And just like all of our software, it is free. So kind of bringing it back and tying it all together, well, EVO is high performance shared storage, specifically tuned for media workflows and for high resolution media, including 4K, 8K, and now 32K out there. It's also all the other things we need to do beyond centralizing our assets. It's organization, it's collaboration, it's sending tags and notes back and forth, creating collections with unique links for other collaborators within the system. It's automation for our power users. Also, it's automation so that we don't have to continually manage our files. One thing creative teams sometimes can struggle with our tight turnaround schedules and things like that is deleting scratch renders. It's clearing files, managing the file system. With ShareBrowser and Slingshot, we put things in place once, we log them, and they're always available for us. And then obviously it's remote editorial with NOMAD. And exactly what we're here to show you today. Now, another thing, I am connected to Steve over an SNS cloud-hosted VPN system. We released this at the beginning of the pandemic as well. Well, we had NOMAD, and we firmly believe in security, so we like to keep things on intranet as opposed to more public internet, especially for many of our clients, more secure content, including many nations' military and things like that. What we wanted to be able to do was provide for our clients who might not have the technical expertise to set up their own VPN an easy way to do so. We can deploy the SNS VPN usually in about an hour. And just like all of our software, it comes with no per seat license fees. Now, this is a unique VPN. Obviously, most of the audience here today, you have corporate VPNs. You have MPLS networks, you have global networks. However, if you have to hire freelancers for your creative team, sometimes working with IT security and generally providing access to your broader corporate network can be quite dangerous. And again, for our more boutique clients, they might not even be able to set up a VPN. So we took a fairly unique approach with our cloud-hosted VPN service. The device inside of your network, our EVO in this case, is the client of the cloud-hosted server, along with all of your remote clients. So when you have to talk to IT, what we're doing is we're providing a tunnel not to your network, but simply to a device within the network that hosts a database, allows us to search, allows us to use our native application extensions from anywhere in the world, and even to use NOMAD. Well, we had a lot of clients that needed this very quickly. Like I said, we were really excited to be able to bring it to them so fast. And here's a few of what they had to say. So what started off as kind of a panicked moment for so many clients, it's really opened up their eyes to a whole new way of working. Now we can, even past pandemic, we might be able to go back to the office, but I have a broader talent pool. I can edit in St. Louis. I can hire editors in Los Angeles while hosting a server in numerous sites around the world, automatically replicating itself. You have the ability to create your own private secure clouds with site-to-site replication. More important, NOMAD has opened up a lot of great new opportunities, expanded workflows, remote editing, and most important for a lot of us in production who don't sleep, a much better work-life balance. So we'll get to see a lot of this stuff later today. I will say content creation has grown everywhere. EVO's across broadcasts now. You heard George mention earlier, both NewTek as well as Ross Video. We're actually privileged to be able to create storage and work with those companies on a very close basis with specific applications. So we're kind of everywhere there as well. So with that, I'll kick it back to Marty and to Steve Manella, and let's start to look at this stuff in real time, shall we?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Steve. That was great. And you made a point that I want to commend all you guys, every single one of you, and everyone in this business. There are a lot of heroes out there, but everybody pivoted, everybody accelerated their development. We were all in panic mode about 15 months ago. We didn't know where we were going to be. Well, we knew one thing: we're going to stay alive, and we're going to keep television happening, regardless whether it was sports, news, corporate enterprise. We kept those images going, and it was because everybody pivoted. So congratulations to all of you guys for what you did over the last 15 months. And with that, you know what, we'll talk to our own other superhero over at the Studio-B&H, the only other guy on this call with a hat. That goes to Steve Manella. So Steve, show us the demo. This was all a big setup for what you're doing right now.
Well, thanks, Marty. I wanted to say thanks to George and Jason and Steve, and definitely some really strong points that each one of them brought up. And some of the key points that I took, from that and share with everybody here is, LiveU's, the data that comes from Jason's camera goes over LiveU's network, but it's a secure network. It's not a public internet kind of thing. So when you come from that filmmaking world, that studio world, in a sense, there's concern about security, and LiveU has the ability to make that or transmit that media, transport it from point A to point B on a secure space. And then, Steve, in talking about the NOMAD workflow and the VPN side of the fence, it certainly addresses the security portion of not being on the public internet. It brings us back into that secure spot as well. So I'm going to go back to a screen that George had shared earlier, and I want to bring this up and share that shot here. This again, just kind of illustrating this workflow in the sense of an 800 field unit sitting in Burbank, and we've got two cameras there that are connected. And probably with a couple of mouse clicks here, I could actually give you both of those feeds. But I'd rather not have a demo that's going well, not go well. But when I switch over to another screen, you'll actually be able to see some thumbnails and some preview shots of that. But in looking at this screen again, we're looking at a mini LF, and they're coming in HD. But remember, the 800 supports 4K, and we could be transmitting and sending a 4K signal across that bonded pipe, again over the LiveU cloud, bringing it down to this OU 4000 in that case, in the 4K environment. And we have that ability to connect and to record that content, whether it comes in via SDI or NDI. We have those options in which to do so. So that's a pretty powerful component that allows our remote production sense to be able to get content from that point A, bring it back out to the storage side of the fence. The way that LiveU handles that in terms of LU Central and what we see here, we're going to take a look at the screenshot here. So what we're looking at on this shot is right over here are the thumbnails of our two cameras that are sitting in Burbank. And, we can see where they're kind of sitting. We even have an address of location. And Jason, I don't know if that's accurate, if it's 2130 North Hollywood Way or not, but maybe we're close enough. As we go further down here, we can see how much data is being parsed out and split up amongst the modems that are sitting inside the 800. And again, we're not connected Wi-Fi, even though we could be, and we're not connected to Ethernet. So, I think if we were transmitting a 4K signal, we might want to have those connections joined into the mix and bond all across the board. But you can see here, again, as we look up there, here's our two data streams that are coming through that are being received in the server that I have here in New York. So I'm going to go back here. The last component on this is tied into the ShareBrowser environment from SNS. So ShareBrowser, a desktop application that connects us to our EVO. This is a connection right into the media pool that we've grabbed some files and we've done some work. And I think with this, I think we should bring Steve McKenna back on and kind of talk about now how the media has been captured here, and from that point, how he's going to get it back to his edit suite back in St. Louis. So Steve, can you jump in here? And
yeah, let's go ahead and share your screen there. Manella, you can prep it for me a little bit. So yeah, we'll take a look at this, and I'm going to kill my video here in just a second. Bandwidth is at a premium. I'm going to try to save this. Hopefully you guys aren't having to present a web meeting while you're also editing. So why don't we go ahead and grab, actually, why don't you go ahead and log that for me? Save me a step, will you?
Okay.
Click on that little pencil next to the ARRI LiveU SNS there. And that looks like Jason. So now that we've got the recording, we've got the file done, let's go ahead and tag it with Jason. I'm pretty sure Jason works at ARRI. So let's do that. And if you got any additional notes for me that you want me to take into the edit, let me know. You're gonna make me put a title on, aren't you? All right. Why don't you go ahead and roll that footage for me for a sec?
Yeah.
And come down to that comments field. And if you want to give me a cut or something, give me a timestamp. That's great. Perfect. Over there. And
pardon my typing here. There you go.
Could you organize that into the bin for me so we can find it real easy? Just right click on that little guy. Let's add it to this project, shall we?
Oh, let's see. Did it go there? It might have been too quick. There we go.
Let me go. Yeah, there you go. Pop it into that little guy. Great. So I'll go ahead and take over and show my screen now. Oh, the fun of live, everybody. Here we go. All right. So I'm going to pop up here, and we are going to take just 1 second so we don't go into the Hall of Mirrors. Let's move this up. And here we have my ShareBrowser. So here's our bin. I'm going to let that go ahead and update, and we'll find the clip that Steve just added. I am doing this over the VPN connection. It'll take just a second to ping back to the database in New York. Obviously, if you're using our API, you could have that database keying up to something more cloud hosted and things like that. While we're waiting for that to happen, we'll go ahead and come back over here, and we can navigate over to the bin. I'm inside of Adobe Premiere here, so I've already kind of prepped my project. I've been waiting on Steve's shot. And we're going to wait for that to come in, and then we'll find the new clip. Now, I can search everything on Steve's EVO in New York, whether that be from the desktop application or whether that be simply from our bin right here. So there's Jason waiting for us with Steve's notes right down here. We can add an additional tag. We can add approval fields, whatever we would like to do. Now, I need to prep this for remote because as we saw in the LiveU section and the bandwidth coming through, that certainly wasn't ARRI raw at that bandwidth. So we could also be recording these things locally. We could be saving these files to multiple locations. For me, what I'm going to do is drag this into my project, the last shot I've been waiting for. And we're going to go ahead and let Adobe import that. While that's happening, I'm going to prep for remote. So I could try to stream this over the internet. You can see what would happen if I did. It's going to take a minute. It's going to choke, whether that be public internet, whether that be Wi-Fi or whatever the case may be, or even just a secure VPN. So what I'm going to do is actually use our NOMAD application right here while that continues to import. What NOMAD's going to allow me to do is take this bin and take the proxies that we've been generating as this has been going for that footage and download them locally to my machine. Then I can use a very traditional offline workflow to be able to accomplish what I'm trying to do here. So let's go ahead and grab the IP of Steve's server. And we can actually grab that through our desktop application. Normally I would use DNS here, but we can go ahead and release a share. Be able to grab that IP address here in just a second. Let's see. It's going to go ahead and release for me. So I actually do have a share mounted over the VPN right now. I'm connected directly to Steve's server using the SNS VPN. And Adobe's generating all those peak files for me, so it's going to take just a second. Now it's caught up, not too bad. And we're 10.87.49.10. So we're going to pop back over here, 49.10. And I need to use my credentials here. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. I'm clearly the remote user. And now I have a choice. As NOMAD launches for me, I can either choose to take something like the project file. I could simply save my Premiere project and pop it in there, and we would identify all of the assets that are in that project. Now, in this particular case, Steve was kind enough to give me a bin. So I'm going to go ahead and grab just my bin, and I need to get these things local. So I need to give it a location. So I'm going to grab this little remote proxies folder that I've got on my desktop, and I'm going to drop it in right there. We're going to review these copy tasks. Some of these proxies I've already pulled, so it's going to skip for me. If there were changes in those files, I could overwrite back there. If I was color grading or something like that, I could also choose to tell NOMAD to give me the source files. And what happens here is what's really important, because again, once files are generated, once they're linked in a project, we can't change their path, or our NLEs will be quite frustrated. So we're going to go ahead and copy these down. It's going to skip the first few for me because I've already got those in here.
Steve, one thing I want to mention is that these files are all log.c. These are not, there's no look assigned or applied to this. It's a straight log.c ARRI capture file.
Nice. And that's the other nice thing we'll see in here too. So we're going to go ahead and download this one. It's going to bring me that proxy. And then what we're going to be able to see if I pop open this folder right here is that we've generated the exact same file folder path of our server back in New York, allowing me to easily transition to an offline workflow. And more important, making it very simple when I send the file back to Steve, that he doesn't spend 20 minutes relinking all of these assets to the source media. This will work with any production application. Again, need to be open. I'm obviously doing it today in Premiere. So while those have come down, we can get rid of NOMAD and just pop right back into our Premiere project. Now, because, well, for a few reasons, I'm sure these file names look familiar to a lot of us. Well, cameras do a fantastic job at many things. For post, sometimes the names of the files are a little less than ideal. So I can see my tags over here. You know, we could add JSON. This is obviously, we're doing this for the studio and we're going with SVVG coming from Burbank. We used those tags before, so they're there in drop downs for me. But even if I weren't using my panel, if I disconnected from the internet at this point, I'm still ready to work because my proxies are local. I can link to them. The internet can go away. My power can go out right now and we're good. I'd love to show that to you. However, I'm not sure the Zoom meeting will continue working very well for me in that regard. So anyway, now we have our file in here. All we would have to do is simply attach our proxy. So right here, we'll just right click. And attach proxy. And again, this is why it's going to be very important that the file naming convention remain the same. Your server, your facility becomes the source of truth. Your remote editors conform to that. So that, again, our media links never get broken. We don't waste all sorts of time running across. It is important to note while I'm doing this that this works equally well with audio files as well as still graphics. They can be put into bins. ShareBrowser can index them. Again, anything on your network that you tell us to. So let's come in here and just attach this. So this file obviously lives on Steve's Evo in the volume section and the STC media share in the ARRI folder. So we'll wait for Adobe to query that file system back here. And then it's going to give me the option to attach my proxy. As we do this, I'm just going to come down to myself as the user, select my my desktop there, and I can follow the path. STC media, ARRI. There's my clip. Okay. Oh, apparently the oh, I know why. I updated. So once that proxy is attached, we can move that onto our timeline. Gotta love live TV. And we'll use the toggle proxy button right here. For those of you who don't have that naturally in your command panel, you can add it inside of Adobe. And again, this is the same for any other production application to be able to toggle in between. So now I can hit spacebar, my video plays smoothly. I can disconnect from Steve entirely and just move up and down my timeline. So from here, all I would have to do is save the file. And because I'm connected to Steve, I can either save it locally. I'm using this off my desktop, or I can save as right back to the Evo in New York if I want to send Steve the project for export, or so that he can render up there. I can also render over the wide area network directly back to the server in New York for deliverable. Now, the one thing I'm not going to get to show you, at this point, we're done. Everything's ready to go. I've been able to edit. I've been able to turn this around, and again, keep everything organized and reusable later. One thing I haven't gotten to show you, though, is what Slingshot can do. So when I do render back to that folder in New York, that folder is being watched by the Slingshot user, by the Slingshot API. It's going to go ahead and transcode out an H.264 deliverable so it can go to Jim's platform. It's going to render out maybe some MPEGs to go to some other platforms like that. And more important, it's going to send email alerts to the pertinent parties. So if the social media team needs the H.264, we can go from there. Our bins also can come into our web app, which is addressable through any web browser. And marketing teams can search our content of the creative team without being able to rename it, break any media links. They would even be able to download social media ready proxies that the Evo has prepared for them. So everything's seamless, always protecting the file system and the ability to search anything, anywhere. So that's it, guys. I'm gonna go ahead and kick it back to Marty, and I look forward to answering your questions along with the other guys here on the panel. But there's your round trip. It's very easy to get high quality video from Burbank to New York to be edited somewhere in between or anywhere else.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, everybody else. Hey, why don't we just bring all the speakers up to the screen? We can throw around some questions, and maybe we can have a bit of a round robin. So, Steve, Jason, Michelle, Steve, George, come on up. Come on up.
Woo, speakers! Thank you, speakers.
Hey, you know what? It's good to see you back.
I think Jim's been in that van for a minute.
I'm in the van down by the river.
Well, let me start with a couple of questions. We got a question from Ruben Henriquez. How long does it take to generate proxy files after footage has been uploaded? How large is the footage you're currently using for this demo?
As Steve said, this is HD. Proxy generation obviously depends on the duration of the clip, the amount of processors, all of which are customizable within our system. So you can configure it for faster proxy gen. But what's cool about this, because we're recording to the final location of the file, we don't have to upload it to download it to generate a proxy to do something like that. Everything is just where it belongs. So proxy generation times may vary depending upon which server you get and which tools you're using.
Steve, we had another question for you. How does the system handle user permissions?
User permissions can be quite granular. Actually, I'm really glad you asked that question. It's not something we got to show in the workflow today. Permissions can be assigned at a variety of different levels, but also at a variety of different modes. So you have your very traditional, we can bind to LDAP or Active Directory for centralized permissions management. You can have local user permissions on the server. More important, we have a unique permission mode. Actually, two of them. The first one, so normally, obviously with servers, you get read-write, you get read-only, you get no access, right? Those are kind of the three flavors of permission, whether those be assigned at the file level, the folder level, or the share level. With SNS, we found that read-only can be, shall we say, limiting to collaboration on that side, where I might be able to access files, but I may also need to save back to the location of those files. So we added something that seems to make a lot of sense to me, which is simply a read, write, reject, delete permission. Because that's really what you're trying to do with read-only, is protect those assets. So with our WRD, all of our collaborators can save project files, not have to violate the file system rules or file system naming conventions, be able to save without the danger of them being deleted. Now, additionally, we have to deal with specific softwares, each with its own different characteristics on a network. So while Premiere has become very network aware, as I said, Resolve has great collaborative tools. So does, so does AVID. There are still other softwares, things like Photoshop, maybe Apple Logic, that aren't network aware. And so we can worry when people have read-write permission onto a server that they can overwrite each other's work. We have a unique locking mode that actually locks files by their extension and actually gives you a messenger service to be able to request an unlock from the right user, or open a file and read only, make changes to it, making even non-natively collaborative softwares collaborative for your teams.
Hey, Michelle, this was your idea, this demo. Obviously, there was a reason. There was something that sort of sparked this idea. Where did you getting a lot of demand for this type of workflow? Where did you come up with this concept for this workflow? Was it with conversations with Steve, with George, with Jason?
Well, I mean, originally, we were going to show sort of the downstream aspect of the collaboration, and then we decided that it was really important to bring in what's essential to image acquisition is a capture system. Without a capture system, you really don't have a complete workflow. So, given the demand that we've seen for remote operations of content capture with large sensor cameras, and to a certain extent, the demand that ARRI has generated with their focus on remote workflows, it seemed like it was a good idea to respond to what we see as a growing demand, and also a perfectly verifiable sort of pipeline that actually functions pretty well, and sort of open it up, to a different type of image acquisition. I think people who have the intention of capturing quality, and everyone these days is talking about cinematic image quality. I think you'll see even in sports, there isn't a single sports media production environment that doesn't shoot with a large sensor camera. So I think that was really the idea, is bridge a few worlds that don't necessarily seem like they're compatible, but are in fact are very much so.
Hey, Jason, I went for a trip around Silicon Valley a couple of years back with Tom Baldessari, and we went into a bunch of studios, some of the major big tech companies, and I was pretty amazed to see a bunch of ARRI equipment in some of these corporate enterprise environments. You don't necessarily think of ARRI in that way, but you certainly showed up in a lot of locations that I was coming across. Are you finding that to be a growth market for your technology, and why the demand for such a high-end imaging, even on the corporate enterprise level?
Yeah, we really appreciate the support up there. Pre-COVID, I would travel up there about 4 or 5 times a year, do ARRI road shows, showcase what we have. But I think that was great with Remote Solution. From day one, people didn't want they already branded it the 2020 Zoom look. And people didn't want the 2020 Zoom look, even from day one. So it was great to hear that they wanted to work with Alexa. They wanted to work with their sky panels, lighting systems. They didn't want any content to look like, oh, look, there's 2020. Oh, that's the footage from 2020. So it was great. I mean, even from day one, they wanted to work with our camera system. So we really appreciate that. And then taking it to the next level with large format too as well was a big deal. So hopefully as soon as I can, I really look forward to getting back up there again. I would travel about 4, 5, 6 times a year up there. So
great. Hey George, obviously there are companies that LiveU's been around for a while. LiveU's been sort of changing the rules for a while, but there are companies that sort of were in the right place at the right time over the last 15 months, and I would consider LiveU being one of those companies. You know, to what extent did maybe you could share what the impact of what took place in our industry and technology, you know, during the pandemic had on a company like LiveU? Were you able to keep up with demand? Were you able to adapt? What kind of things let's look underneath the hood of a major company like LiveU, and how did the pandemic impact your business, impact the way you did business?
Yeah, from a business perspective, I mean, it was probably one of the biggest and biggest growth years of our company in our company's history. I mean, a lot of people moved to this IP connected and remote workflows, right? I mean, out of necessity. Companies couldn't go into their offices, had to go to these insert studios that I talked about previously. You know, one of the things that's really interesting that kind of touches on Michelle's point a little bit, and a little bit on Jason's, you know, we also found new markets that we'd never been in before. So for example, like Video Village, you know, LiveU traditionally hadn't been involved in Video Village at all, right? That wasn't a market that we were really focused on. That wasn't a vertical we were really involved in. And all of a sudden we started, you know, popping up with production companies and film companies asking to use our technology in Video Village because, you know, obviously you couldn't have, because of COVID, people gathering around just, you know, a traditional set, you know, Video Village environment where everybody's sitting around one big monitor, right? You had to have all these separate monitors, and our solution is a perfect setup for that type of an environment. So, you know, it was a very crazy time for us, and you know, integration from, you know, from the standard DSLRs and cameras that we traditionally see to these higher end cameras also was new for us in some respects. Although in the sports vertical, as Michelle alluded to, you know, that's one of our biggest selling markets. Sports is at LiveU, and we're used to that already, those longer throw cameras. But now coming in, you know, seeing a lot more productions being done with these higher end ARRI cameras and others, that was kind of new for us, and that was a big growth vertical as well. So seeing a lot of the Silicon Valley folks and these new type of things kind of come out of nowhere, it made us rethink some of the business models that we had, you know, become accustomed to, and then learn new business models that we'd never thought of before.
Well,
Marty,
George,
I just wanted
George,
to.
Can I share
Jason.
one thing?
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Okay,
Oh,
go ahead.
everybody's on.
Everybody's going.
Everybody has something to say.
All right, I'll pick. Jason, go, man.
Sorry, just one extra point. One of the things we really found, especially with commercials and content for the web as well as for broadcast, that the large format let them take advantage of shooting 9:16 without rotating the camera. So being in large format, our sensor is a lot taller. So you can still shoot that 2880 by 1620 for the different frame lines that you need for 9:16. So you could do that. Before you would have to rotate the camera, but now it's saving producers a lot of time. So they like the versatility as well as cinematographers for this, because the formats are constantly changing. So, and sometimes they don't even give them a chance to shoot a second take in 9:16. So you can make custom frame lines in our camera to be able to host these new formats as well. So just wanted to share a little insight as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I
Michelle,
love the
you have something?
flexibility of that stuff in post, Jason. I'll let Michelle go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that was, you know, I omitted to mention that one of the source for imagining, you know, this event today was a visit we had by a production team at CNN in the studio. And these guys bought their mini LS from us, and they bought their LiveU systems from us, and they wanted to go out and send their interview teams, you know, with the mini LF and send a live feed over LiveU, and it was clear that all of a sudden, what we had sort of imagined was really, it was a proof of concept right there that, this kind of workflow had a life. Not only had a life, but people other than us were actually looking at it for real practical applications. So.
Yeah.
All right. Got I have Skinner around still, and Skinner's always good for a good question because he's sitting in his RV somewhere. So Skinner, you still there?
Oh, wait, the host stopped my video. Hey, stop the video. Wait, it says I can't start my video. The host stopped it.
Oh no, Michael.
Oh, no.
Let's see
Okay,
let's
there
see
we
the guy
go.
in the van.
Oh,
There
there
he
he
is.
is. Up there.
So
he is.
I'm kind of interested in how this is all going. Like, I'm seeing a lot of streams being run by social media. I know that Twitter, we kept up like probably a couple dozen streams from PGA and other partners that we just kind of always had running all the time. And so I'm seeing the social media sites become more and more like a broadcast hub, but they're not quite there yet. Who thinks the inflection point will occur when, Facebook or Amazon or Twitter or somebody will have more streams running into a hub than, say, like Turner has out of Atlanta? When do we think that's going to happen? A year, 5 years?
I think that's already happening. I mean, Amazon has broadcast rights to the Super Bowl, and they're a bigger company.
Yeah,
I think that's already
Amazon.
happening.
Yeah, Amazon just landed the rights of the League One football in France. So there you go. I think it's it's happening as we speak.
And unlike, or I shouldn't say this, they're a customer, but unlike our friends at JP Morgan, they're not breaking the league apart and making everyone angry. So that's always good. They're kind of honoring what's there. But speaking of the sports stuff, I'll tell you, one of the coolest things to see this year, when I was stuck at home, watch a lot of sports, the live shallow depth of field shot that you were getting on the sideline in the Super Bowl. You've never seen that before.
Yeah.
And it was so neat to explain to my friends some cool cinematography stuff while we're watching a sporting event. It's like, do you see how that looks? Do you see the separation you get, when the players are walking off the field and on? I mean, it's a whole new world, man. And that cinematography, that quality to be brought to a live event is just stunning to see. And it certainly makes my life, and like I said, in post, a heck of a lot simpler. I've got a lot more latitude. I've got a lot more color, and I can, more important with George's technology and the ability to adjust that stream in real time and get me something I can start to cut. I'm not necessarily going to finish against, but I can start to cut in much more real time, is a huge time saver, while I can move the much larger images in the background and get everything prepped for Michelle being my DP, who can be quite demanding on the look. He doesn't want to see my bad dailies and my proxy. He wants to see that already raw.
Folks, so let's say that Amazon ends up being, bigger than Turner, bigger than ABC a few years from now. How do we think that it's like dealing with that vendor versus dealing with the traditional studios? Like, I don't know, I'm biased because I think we're pretty reasonable and I think we pay our bills, Tom. I think we do. But I mean, what's it like trying to sell into Amazon? We don't like take lunches down in LA, right? The way the studio system works, right? So I don't know that people feel like they have an in and they actually know how the corporate makes decisions and that kind of thing. I'm just curious your opinion. What it's been like dealing with Amazon versus like the studio system.
It's still fairly similar. I'm still dealing with content creators. I mean, at the end of the day, they have unique needs. Certainly the purchase process might be a little more laborious.
Yeah, I was going to say that, Steve.
Dealing with, with corporate IT, but yeah.
Yeah, the purchase process might be a little bit longer, or a little bit more challenging versus the traditional, in a sense. Well, the studio side of the fence, it's a little bit more, I think, maybe focused. But at that corporate side, there's probably a couple more hurdles that people have to jump through to get where they need to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it comes down to their contract process and purchase process is very similar to a big broadcaster anyway. I mean, it really is. But like Steve said, it is. You're still dealing with the same type of creators, same type of people, engineers, editors, producers. That group of people are similar talents and that, but when you get into contracts, it's a similarly aligned to a big broadcast network.
I think the transactional aspect of everything really is not changing so much. I think is who is the owner of the rights, to distribute and broadcast is really changing. And I think, that's a big Mike Tyson type uppercut on the chin of broadcasters. But it is the same kind of profile, and I'm going back to the reason I'm going back to the French league is because I was there when the deal was signed. It was all over the news, and you could see that your traditional sports broadcasters in France were like, "Ooh, this is not good for us." But essentially, the process was the same. It really acquiring the rights and then distributing them and then monetizing it in the same fashion, through advertisers, and everything else. So
I think a good analogy could be drawn between when Netflix got their first nominations for Academy Awards, right? And I think that's a great analogy to use, because that's when all the other networks and everybody else were like, "Who's Netflix?"
Yeah, and I think in the same token, you read in the news today that one of the fierce defender of the traditional system, Steven Spielberg, his company Amblin Production has now signed a deal with Netflix. So it's just deal making. The transactions are the same.
I just want to say one thing is that when it moves away from the cable operators and the satellite, the transcode fees change considerably. And so the deal play when it comes to IP is actually incredibly beneficial, much more beneficial for the content owner. And so, I think we're going to see quite a bit of shift, because it's the funds that are backing this up are really deep pockets, and they're going to be actually bringing more benefit to the content owners than what has been in the past. So that's quite disruptive when it comes to it. So content creators, you're in a really good spot.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, it's really democratizing distribution, right? The distributor was the most powerful house for content before. Now it is. It's the content creator. It's the league. It's the YouTube influencer. It's the TikTok star. And they get to own that and really talk to their audience, which is cool.
Yeah. So we're in a post-production is in a really good spot. It's really in a good spot right at the moment, and especially the efficiencies of a company like LiveU or the company, the editing groups, so the remote production, remote editing, the capabilities that are out there. It's a race, and it's really exciting. And the cameras, oh my God. The capabilities of having the remote cameras and the 5G work that's currently going on, like in the preparations for World Cup and FIFA, is astounding. And if you really deep dive into the Olympics right at the moment in 4 weeks, it's a case in itself. What's going on over there? It's pretty cool. You're going to see some outstanding new ways of engaging with the athletes. Somewhat intrusive too.
Yeah, did you ever think you'd have the PTZ on the side of the building for the local weathercast would be an ARRI? How much better does that look? Like I said, the quality of the control is. I think there's always going to be a place at the high end for quality. There's more content than there's ever been, which means some of it great, some of it maybe less than, some more campy, But it's just cool to see, and I think there's always a place for really high quality, and certainly. Silicon Valley, your brands. I mean, Jim, for you, Facebook's brand is incredibly powerful. And you guys have cranked out a lot more commercials that I've seen in the last year with all of this than I've seen for Facebook ever. So
it would really help though if Jason would send us an LF. I really feel like if I could just spend more time with his product, we would understand it better.
Jim, I'll be up there soon. Hopefully I'll get out of here and come visit you.
Oh my gosh, come visit. Yeah, let me know when you're up there, okay? Let me know.
Yes, please.
Where's Jim's van? How do you find Jim if he's in the van?
It might be easier for Jim to get to you. He's on wheels.
Right.
There might be a new story called
I got a couple more
Jim?
questions, guys. A couple more
see.
questions from David Crown. David Crown wants you to look into the crystal ball. He wants you to say, where 5 years from now, will this workflow still be relevant? How's it going to change?
It'll still be relevant for sure. It'll advance beyond anything that we can imagine today. Just like I think in March of 2020, where we were sitting, and in the middle of March, how fast we evolved. Technology existed, but it wasn't being repurposed in the way that it's being purposed today. So creators, developers like LiveU and like ARRI and like SNS and many others they're working on the next big thing and how to advance their technology to the next step or beyond. So I think that this REMI remote, this production cycle, this workflow is the future, and it just is going to get better, and it's going to be over the wire like we're doing it, but it's going to be faster, where resolutions are going to change.
But that's the challenge, right, Steve?
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with you wholeheartedly, but that's the thing. No matter how fast we update the network, ARRI gives me more data faster. Resolutions increase, HDR increases, the size of the files increase. So I think there's always going to be this kind of, everything will be faster and will look better, and things like that. There's always going to be this kind of hybrid workflow. There's going to be more stuff in the cloud that's accessible to stream and things like that. But if I'm doing a feature film for Steven Spielberg, Michelle, I'm going to deal with full res, the uncompressed ARRI raw to do that.
Steven, you said the magic word.
Latitude.
You said the magic word. You said HDR. My question for George would be, George, when do you think people are going to start streaming HDR to YouTube and Facebook and such?
Well, that's a great question. I'm not sure exactly when they'll start doing that. Now, you can use with the LU800 today, you can use HDR, and that's great for sports production for sure, real high-end stuff and other types of productions. But I'm not sure when they're going to be doing Facebook and YouTube streaming with HDR.
Can you RTMP an HDR signal? Can you do like Rec 2020 and a MPEG-4 transport?
That's a great question. That just went above my pay grade on that one. So I'm going to take a pass and have to come back with an answer to you on email. But thank you for asking that one, Jim. You stumped me.
You know what would be a great way to make sure that we support it is, why don't you give me that unit that will send HDR or transport stream? Maybe we can make that happen.
Go back in the band, Skinner.
But I do want to say something on the 5-year plan, because it's interesting. I started our relationship, LiveU's relationship with the studio 3 years ago. And at that time, we had almost none of the stuff that we talked about today. There was really no, REMI production that we were doing that really hadn't taken off yet for LiveU. There were no things like Tally and video return yet, or 5G wasn't implemented yet. So just in a 3-year compressed window of this relationship, so many things have happened and changed and have developed. And the REMI production model, that is probably one of the fastest growing things in LiveU over the last, I'd say, 2 years for sure. People have moved to that model wholeheartedly, are running towards that model for the cost savings and everything else. I think for the next 5 years, you can't, I don't have a crystal ball like Steve was saying, but I think things are going to continue to move into that model. And I think you'll see more adoption of 5G as it rolls out, obviously. But it's so hard to predict. But just in that one small relationship discussion of knowing the people at the studio, so much changed in just those 3 years. So,
all right,
I gotta tell you,
I've got one thing, Martin. If I could say, is like two things to capitalize and comment on what's happening. There's two things that are happening right now. The efficiencies of codecs. Jim brought it up when it came to where we're at with the new MPEG-5 platform. It's foundation. It's really impressed the content and being able to distribute it onto much faster across the networks. And then with the REMI, all we have to do is take a look at some of the productions that are currently going on, like Dark Bay, and the new production that is happening. It's entirely REMI, because what's REMI? It's drones. It's hundreds of drones, and it's hundreds of cameras that are capturing them. All of them are remote, and when it comes down to that, what is being produced and what is being put together to be simulated, they can do it. They can create whatever they want now. And it was all created during the pandemic. And so take a look at Dark Bay. It's a really interesting production that is being produced through Netflix, and I have some insight on that if anybody ever wants to share. So,
well, Alan, why don't you just pop your email in the chat? People want to get in touch with you, please get in touch with Alan McLennan.
Sure.
So guys, anything else? I want to, Dave Van Hoy, you've been quiet since I picked on you in the beginning. You have any comments for these guys here?
I work with all of them. It's it's great stuff. I mean, I think they said it well. It's a world in change dramatically, and I think the only the next piece that'll be interesting is moving the core piece to either private or public clouds, so that you get the lowest transport and Remy without the backhaul house, it's and the LiveU people have been fantastic partners in helping us pioneer that, and and so I think that'll be the other part, and it's going to be interesting to see which workflows fall out where, but things like the new ARRI cameras. I mean, I have to admit, people may see us and B&H as competitors, but I love seeing what you guys are putting together. It's it's transformative for all of our customers, and I really compliment you. Today was a great presentation, and it's not easy to pull off. And so, wait, Steve, when you said you'd been in the room for 16 hours, I believe you. And so the only other thing I was going to say is I really want an EVO the size of the one behind Steve McKenna, because
just to scale.
That reminds me of a wall of Marshall Anners.
Boy, you're not kidding. I mean, it was
Hendrix. He's the Hendrix of video, man.
This is the equivalent of my old. It's like think of the platters. They're about the size of laser discs behind me. These are 100 terabyte drives.
David's McKenna's sort of metaphor on scalability.
Yeah, but just think of the fans that are in those.
Actually, it's an optical illusion, guys. I'm just really small.
Marty, I heard the pandemic had that effect on some people.
Yeah, it was interesting. Yeah,
it made us all feel very small, indeed. Well,
Marty, before you go, there was another question that came up from James Turner, and I think this is really going to be geared towards George in regards to the extender antennas that the extender antenna system for the LiveU, the encoders. So, Judd.
Yeah, so we do have a LiveU extender that can be connected to any of our units, the LU800 or any of them. Actually, it could be connected via Ethernet or Ubiquity. Does two things. It's really excellent tool. It's great for low bandwidth situations, and it's also great for big crowd situations. So sporting venues, concerts, think of those types of things, Super Bowl, what have you. And it adds 6 additional modems to the unit that you already have. So if you have an LU800 with 6 modems in it, it adds 6 more. So you'd have a total of 12 bonded connections. And inside of the extender, this has these modems are high gain modems. So, every modem that's in your cell phone and modems that are in the devices themselves are just standard modems that would connect just like any cell phone to the first available tower. So when you're in a stadium or in an environment where everybody's trying to stream, they all go to that first available tower, lock onto it, and you're, connected to that bandwidth, which is, finite, and it's going to shrink and eventually be all gobbled up. When you have an extender connected to your unit, it actually has the ability to go beyond that first set of towers. So where, a tower is not constrained by all the people sucking that bandwidth, so you can get your shot out, which is really important, obviously, when you're trying to stream and get a shot out, right? So that's what the extender does, and you'll see it used a lot in sporting events, for example, or these major events where you'll see it mounted up in the press box. It's a tripod mount. You can also get a vehicle mount extender, and they'll put it up in the press box, and it'll be connected via Ubiquity. Wireless, and you'll see the guy with the LiveU unit running around down on the field, and it'll be transmitting up to the extender via Ubiquity and then getting out to the other towers somewhere where it's not getting the bandwidth issues that you might have if you just had a pack alone.
All right, George, thank you. Well, listen, thank you all for this. This was a great evening, a great demonstration. Thank you, George. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Steve McKenna. Thank you, Steve Manella. Thank you, Michelle, for coming up with the idea and putting this all together. You guys rock. We'll be back next month, and if we can get Skinner back, maybe we'll do it from his RV. Who knows? But we do have, for a change, we actually have we plan next month, and you met Dave Van Hoy, one of the sponsors of this organization, along with B&H. Dave will be back with what they've been developed at ASG, a remote production service that they've developed powered by Google Cloud called Virtual Production Control Room. So they'll be doing their own demo next month. I thank everyone for coming. This was recorded. It'll be posted to YouTube, so we'll be getting the word out further and wider. We thank you for this, and just spread the word. Come back next month, and we'll see you. And again, stay well, stay healthy, and wait a minute. More important, are you guys all going to NAB? Are you going to be there?
You bet.
You bet.
Yes, we will. We definitely will be there.
We'll be there.
There as well.
We'll be there, Marty.
B&H will be there for sure.
All right, guys. Hey, Baldessari, you going to be there? You're bringing some of your sauce?
Marty, I'm bringing my vodka sauce. I'm there. Don't worry.
All right. Hey, listen.
Wait. But do I got to cook for everybody?
You know what? You're the godfather of Silicon Valley, baby. You're
I'll
cooking
bring
for
it.
everybody.
Hey, let's not forget IBC too. That's going to be pretty rocking.
December, yeah, should be fun.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting.
We'll be there as well.
The shows are going to be interesting, guys, but it'll be good to see you in the flesh, and thank you all. Hey,
Just want to mention something
you want
really
to sign
quick.
us off?
Thank you,
I
Marty.
want to mention something really quick. Marty, is that all right? Is that
Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
So, guys, our travel is starting to open up a little bit. Marty and I might plan something for November. We're thinking about it, right, Marty? We're trying to put something together for November.
We're hoping.
We're looking at it. We're not guaranteed yet, but we're hoping to get like a post NAB wrap up for you guys out in Silicon Valley.
That'd
I
be
know
great.
a lot of people aren't going to be able to make NAB because of the budgets. Everything's still new, and we're post-pandemic at that point. So we're going to try to do something possibly in November. We're coming up with a strategy right now. Let's see what happens. I mean, I'd love to see you guys in person.
Fingers crossed, baby.
Right, exactly. Fingers crossed. I'd love to see you guys in person. I love California in November. It's beautiful. So hopefully we could possibly do something like that. And I want to thank Michelle and Steve as well. You guys have been like the rock for us. Seriously. We've definitely seen our production increase with ARRI, right, Michelle? We could definitely say that. A lot of ARRI cameras coming through, LiveU, just a lot of awesome projects were in the works with Studio, and being able to help customers source other projects that we never able to do before. So I would commend you guys a lot for what you've done for us.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Michelle, George, Jason, Steve, who did I forget? Everybody on the call. Thank you. We'll see you next month.
Thank
Thank you, Marty.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thank
Steve,
you.
Thanks,
George.
everybody.
I forgot you all
So long,
are
guys.
still home. I forgot.
Guys, have a
you're
great
all
evening.
home. Good night, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
It's been
All right.
fun.
Later,
It's been a lot
Skinner.
of fun. Skinner.